Hello, my name is Isaac Hillaker. This is for my data structures final project. I made a task manager application that sorts tasks based on priority. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to demonstrate the project and show you how it works. So not much to look at, but as you can see, we have a section for the tasks that we need to do, the tasks we've completed, and the tasks that we decided we didn't need, and we deleted them. And we've also got buttons here to accomplish these various things. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to make a simple task. I'm just going to call it task number 1, just so it's a little easier to see the priority one that I'm assigning it. I'm going to press Add New, and it's going to add that to my to-do tasks list box. So this is now something I need to get done today. I'm going to go ahead and add another one. I'm going to call it task number 3, and I'm going to assign it a priority of 3. And what it should do is tasks with higher priority should be going on to the top. So it does. And let's go ahead and make sure that if I add a task number 2 with a priority of 2, that it gets in the middle of these two. You know, it doesn't go on the bottom and it doesn't go on the top. Because the priority is in the middle, it should go to the middle. And it does, which is great. And so let's just say I have a task, number 3.5 or something. We're going to assign it a priority of 4, which is out of range. Let's just do that real quick. Oop, it doesn't add it because I did not enter it incorrectly. I need to use a 1, 2, or a 3. If I use a negative number, it must be a number, 1, 2, or 3. Well, technically it is a number, so I guess there's a bug right there. But it is working because it's not allowing me to implement or to add that task. So, okay, fine. I'll just say it's task number 3. So now I've got 2 priority 3 classes on top, priority 2, priority 1. So let's just go ahead and say that I have completed task number 3.5. So I'll just click on it, and I'll press the complete task button. So you can see it gets removed here, and it gets pushed all the way over here to the completed tasks. So this is updating the object behind the user object behind the scenes as well. So it's updating on the front end, but we're also making sure we're keeping track on the back end as well. So then let's say that I have completed, or that I don't need task number 2. I entered that in by mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and I'll delete this one too. But I am going to complete task number 3, so I'll just complete that. So as you can see, I've pressed the delete task. It has successfully deleted both of the tasks and removed them from this to-do tasks list box. But maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I actually did need task number 2, and I don't want to re-enter. So I'll say undo, and nope, I want task number 2. I'm going to undo one more time, and it's still sorting by priority, so that's good. So task number 2, you're the one that I needed, so I completed you, but no, I still don't need this. I'll delete it as well. So if I go ahead and push all these buttons here, even when I have no selections, you can see that my console behind the scenes isn't throwing any errors, and my program is not crashing. It is still working as intended. But yeah, if I try to say add new, and don't give it any input, it's like, hey, do something though. So overall, it is working how I intended it to. So whenever we have to-do tasks, they are always listed by their priority, which is what I want them to be doing. So that is great. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the program itself, and I can show a little bit of the code behind the scenes. So I'm going to leave the driver, and I'm going to go to my classes. So as you can kind of see, some of the strengths of the application are primarily, I think, how it looked. There are obviously some functionality things. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna open this back up real quick. Might be make more sense to look at it. So one thing I originally wanted to do was to have like a login page on the first section, so you could enter in your name, and then it would appear right here. My name is appearing because the user object's attribute name is Isaac, so it's going to show my name. But I really wanted to have a login page that would show before this part, so that you could enter in your name, and then it would appear up here. And I just thought that would be a little neater, but I kind of realized that that's kind of wasting a lot of time adding those extra things when I should have been focusing on getting the actual project parameters met first and make sure that they were working well. So I had to kind of divert my attention a little bit. So that is, I think, something I would change if I had to do this in the future. But otherwise, as far as the strengths of the project go, I think the strength of this is that the priority queue works, the stack works. The priority queue is what we would put in these to-do tasks here. These two, completed task and deleted task, these are both stack objects. And all of them seem to be working really well. I've had no issues. So I would say that is the big strength is, it does work. The weakness, I would say, besides a few different behavioral things, like, if I was actually trying to make a market-ready task manager application, I would add way more bells and whistles. I'd make it more user-friendly, etc. The primary reason I have not done that is, well, I've got a ton of other work I'm doing too, and I wanted to make sure, since this is a data structures class, that I was getting the data structures part down. That was my number one priority. So, so I'd say it's probably the biggest weakness. That, and it does not, it's not mobile friendly, that's for sure. So, yet another reason I would have loved to have used HTML and CSS, because that is so much easier. So, now let's look at those classes for real this time. So, as you can see, I have 4 different classes here. I've got my priority queue object, I've got my priority queue class, stack class, the user class, and the GUI class. So I'm not going to go through each individual method because that'll take too long. I implemented a priority queue using a Python module called heapqueue, which just literally is a queue data structure. And we just modified it slightly to make sure that we are doing a priority queue instead of just a regular one. But yeah, we have all the regular methods you would expect from one. This functions as intended. I'm actually storing this as a list behind the scenes, and I have my index here as well. And the priority queue class is being utilized by this user class to store the to-do tasks. The to-do task is an attribute of my user class, which is an priority queue object. My user class actually has a bunch of methods as well that utilize some of the methods found in this priority queue. So that is how I'm able to actually update the user's priority queue object, this to-do task one, which also comes into play later when I'm using the GUI class to update the front end. I am then using the user's methods defined here to make sure that the front end and the back end are actually both working in sync with each other. So, and going back up, so you see that, 2 of these attributes here, the tasks we've completed and the tasks we've deleted, that they are both stack objects. And those are, of course, being implemented here in this class stack. Again, it's a very generic stack, abstract data type. And we're saving it as a Python list because Python lists by default basically already behave like a stack does. So you can see my methods here are not very crazy because they don't need to be at all. Python actually does a lot of the heavy lifting, which is great. It makes it much more efficient and easier to read and understand. So, so those are my 2 data structures that I used, and both of them are being used by my user object. So we have all of that there. And the final one is my GUI class. This literally is implementing the actual front-end part of the program, and it's using a Python module called tkinter, which is not the greatest thing in the world in my opinion. I think it's just supposed to be great right out of the box so you can just get things moving, but it's not actually, in my experience, ideal for making, GUIs or user layouts. So this was the main thing I wanted to avoid. I wanted to use HTML and CSS, but, this is what we ended up going with. You can see I have the buttons and stuff like that. I have entry forms as well, where I'm actually getting the name and the priorities, as we saw. And these buttons are calling, the different methods of the GUI class. And these different methods in this class are literally calling on user methods. So let's look at this deleted tasks one real quick. So if I want to delete a task that we've already added, I got to make sure that I'm updating the user object itself behind the scenes, but I also need to make sure that these changes are being reflected on the front end as well. So, I'll get my item. So, selected item. I'm using a cursor selection. So whichever item I click on, is the one I'm going to delete. And then I'm going to run this user object method called delete task, passing the selected item as the parameter. And that's going to delete it's not going to delete, it's going to move the task from the to-do task section to the deleted task section behind the scenes of the user object. And then I'm also going to make sure that on the front end, I am removing that selected item from the task list box as well in the GUI. That way it is reflecting on the front end the changes that we are seeing behind the scenes. And we're going to add that selected item to the deleted task list box. And that's super easy. Again, this is just a tkinter function here, insert. I'm literally just going to insert it straight into that list box. And then just to make sure that the to-do task list box is actually up to date, I am running this other method that I made called update list box. And this is probably the most important method when it comes to keeping the GUI up to date, because it is literally going in. It is literally going in and making sure that whatever is happening behind the scenes in the priority queue is reflected. So you can see it kind of here, this for loop. I'm looking for the priority, and I'm looking for the name, and this sorted task, which is lambda function here. There we go. Here we are actually accessing our, there we go, our user to do tasks. That's our priority queue. I just kind of save that in a variable called pq. And we're going to literally iterate through this in a for loop, and we're going to go through the priority queue and say, okay, what's in here? And whatever's in there, that's what we are going to insert back into the list box. So this update list box is called after every one of these methods here. For completing a task, deleting a task, undoing a deletion, adding a task, they will all run this update list box to make sure that the to-do task is always up to date and sorting as a priority queue should. So that is kind of the main bones of the project and how it works. So I'm not going to go through every single method. That'll take way too much time, and a lot of them are stuff we've been learning all semester. So I say overall what I've learned from this project is, I've used front-end and back-end stuff before, but this is probably the hardest I've had a time of with it. Making sure that whenever I update something behind the scenes, that the front end shows that as well. And that took a little getting used to, though I did get pretty good at it by the end. There were certain times where I had to tweak methods because I saw something was wrong, and I realized by the end of it I was actually pretty good at finding that problem because I was getting so used to it. So that is good. It's been very good practice for me to kind of rethink how programming works, because now I don't just have the abstract, I guess, of watching the console and seeing what it prints out. Now I'm actually trying to say, okay, the behind the scenes stuff is working, but how do I get that to work with the front end? So if I had to do this project again and approach it differently, I would probably, I guess now that I have the experience, overall I'd probably do things very similarly, but what I would love to do is, and this was my original plan, is not use tkinter. I wanted to use Python Django to make a web application, because HTML and CSS I'm very good at, and I know that I can make a very good user experience and a good user interface for this thing. And if I had more time to work on this project, I would definitely add more, I guess, bells and whistles. I'd add that login page I talked about, so that you could actually kind of customize it more. I would probably add checkboxes next to the tasks. That way it's more user-friendly, it's more intuitive for them to say, instead of just this thing of numbers, there's actually a checkbox, and I can double-click it, and then it'll complete. Something like that. So this is clearly not market-ready, and it would be really cool to actually make it more. Not that I'm going to go around trying to sell it, but it would actually be good practice. So the biggest roadblock, and I already kind of talked about it, was literally just how the heck do I get the back end changes to reflect on the front end? And that was the big thing. So I ultimately overcame that. It was definitely very challenging, but I noticed a substantial decrease in difficulty the farther along the project I got. It just seemed like something clicked after a while, and I was just way better at kind of, seeing how things worked and thinking about them the right way. So that is all. I guess I can go over the unit tests real quick. I'm not going to go through each one because there's 23 of them. But yes, you can see, I'm going to raise this up here. We are testing every single method, different test cases. We're testing the GUI class, priority queue, the stack, the user, and we're going through each method found in them to make sure that they are working. And as you can see, all 23 of them are passing. So, yeah, unit testing is good, but man, kind of dry and boring and frustrating sometimes, but it is good. All right, well, that is my presentation. I think I answered everything as needed. So hopefully the project works correctly, and yeah, hopefully it satisfies the parameters of the final project assignment. Thank you.